27-24, the Miami Hurricanes end up emerging victorious in this game. I think it goes without saying, enormous win for the Canes. I know I talked about it on the preview. I'll say it again now, but like Notre Dame went to the national title game last year, and coming into this one did not have that same existential question about whether the program can win the big game, because they won 3 big playoff games and they were probably only a few big plays away from Ohio State in that championship game.
Sure.
But Miami played its way out of the ACC. They played their way out of the playoff. They went out with a huge whimper at the end of last season, and they needed this. They needed this one to build some goodwill in the fan base. They needed this one to prove that the philosophy Mario Cristobal is using to build this program, some of the transfer moves that he made, that these things were working, that these things could yield results. As we say here, as the kids say these days, I think we got to give Miami its flowers, Dan. This was a really good opening week performance at home, a lot riding on it. Stakes could not be higher. I absolutely think it was a bigger spot for Miami than it was for Notre Dame, and they delivered. So kudos to them.
Yeah, the pressure was on Miami, right? You mentioned the offseason moves, more specifically making a change at defensive coordinator, making a change at quarterback via the portal and Carson Beck, and getting healthier up front. Rueben Bain was dealing with a lot last year, nicked up. And so we saw what Miami can be against a good team, what we think is going to be a really good team in Notre Dame, with the juice of a full stadium and the juice of a pass rush. I think the story here is what Miami was mostly able to do on defense, which, yes, they gave up some chunk plays and there were breakdowns. What was it? Eli Raridan is the tight end du jour of Notre Dame this year. He got loose for a long gain. And obviously, I think it was Jadarian Price had a long run early. But really, what Notre Dame was able to do was not a ton on offense. They were, and that's, I'm sure Notre Dame people will point to the combination of a new quarterback, a somewhat deficiencies at tackle along the offensive line against Miami's pass rush, and a conservative game plan, especially early on. Yeah. But really, if you're talking about a team that was excited to be aggressive and impose its will, it's specifically what Miami was able to do on defense, specifically up front. Just Mesdor and Rueben Bain were getting tackles for loss. They were getting to CJ Carr. Rueben Bain had an interception on that tip ball near the sideline. To me, that's the story. Does it mean that Miami's defense is fully developed and ready to stomp the ACC? Not necessarily. Mm-mm. They've got Florida in a couple of weeks, I believe. That'll be crazy fun. But if there was any specific thing that I came away impressed by, because we knew Notre Dame's defense was going to be really good. And for a lot of this game, they seemed to be. We knew that there were going to be growing pains for CJ Carr. We knew Carson Beck, if healthy, was likely going to be really good, even with a new look receiving core. But with that offensive line, with the success that this Miami offense had last year, I wasn't penciling in this as like a finished product Miami offense.
No.
But to me, the huge unknown, aside from CJ Carr and what he would or would not be able to do, was Miami's defense. And they, I would say 93% answered that bell emphatically. That to me was the story.
See, what I like most about Miami, at least earlier in the game, maybe the first 2.5, 3 quarters.
Yeah.
They established themselves as bullies when they had the football.
When they had the football. Yeah, that too.
You talk about what they did on defense, and I can get to that. They certainly won the line of scrimmage on defense, but I think for a good chunk of this game, they also won the line of scrimmage on offense.
Definitely.
Offensively, what they did on the ground to me, and I made a video about this that I posted out on our social channels late last night. What they did on the ground very much set the tone. Granted, it was like 3 yards a carry. You're not going to look at the box score. It's not going to slap you in the face, but they did get some key runs over the first 3 quarters of the game. It kept them ahead of the chains. It extended some of those really long drives, those demoralizing drives.
Sure.
When you're watching as a fan and it feels like the opponent is never going to get off the field because they just keep going and going and going and going. That is what the ground game did for Miami here. I had the feeling for the first 65% of this game that Notre Dame just as I said, was not going to be able to get Miami off the field no matter what. And it was because of that ground game. Now, I'm still mixed on Carson Beck. Carson Beck had a good game. He did. Still mixed on Carson Beck, but played a smart game. I am all in on Malachi Tony and CJ Daniels. They had really good games.
Ooh, that one-handed catch,
wide.
buddy.
I mean, you want to talk about clear upgrades over what Carson had last year while he was at Georgia when they couldn't catch anything.
Right.
This was, I thought, a really, really good showing, a promising start for the Miami receiving core. And then again, as you mentioned, a defensive line. Rueben Bain had an awesome game. I checked the PFF grades, 93.3, which is really high. That's a really good game from Rueben Bain. He was everywhere. The Notre Dame line also did make a bunch of mistakes.
Yeah.
Who's to say if that's because Miami's front is so good or just because Notre Dame's line is still figuring it out and they had some communications issues. But either way, the Miami defensive front is definitely going to be a problem for pretty much every team on this schedule. I thought Corey Heatherman, did you see some of the clips of Corey Heatherman on the sidelines?
Of course.
Corey Heatherman did a really good job in this game. Also looks like a maniac. An absolute maniac.
It was a lot of Corey Heatherman. It was a lot of Chris Ash in his weird mock turtleneck t-shirt situation, and a lot of clips of is it Tammy Carr, CJ Carr's mom? She was the Anthony Beck of this game.
Yes, 100%. Absolutely the Anthony Beck of this game. No, yeah. Corey Heatherman, man. I watched the game with my mom and we were like, who's that dude? I even said to her, if you told me at halftime he tried to eat a live bird, I would have believed it. Just looks like a total maniac, but I thought did a pretty good job in his debut. So kudos to him. I came away impressed. I really did. I will say this, though.
Yeah.
If there is one caveat on the Miami side, the first 2.5 quarters were great. That was exactly who Miami wants to be.
Yeah.
The last quarter and a half.
There's that Mario stamp.
The last quarter and a half was the microcosm of what Miami has been.
Yeah.
And so I think if you're a Canes fan now, the question is, at least the rest of the way, which Miami are you going to get more of this season? Are you going to get the first part of that, which was aggressive, foot on the gas, felt like they had Notre Dame on the back foot? The final quarter and a half, where they're essentially playing not to lose. And it's not a Shannon Dawson thing. Shannon Dawson called a great game. This is a Cristobal thing. An absolute Cristobal thing.
The third downs went terribly, I want to say. They settled. I mean, not settled, but they were playing for field goals. Yeah, they sort of took their foot off the gas again. That's a Mario thing. But winning is good, and they won the game. They won a close game. They had it was a 14-point lead. It was a 21-7 game that they could have stretched out and really sort of lost their identity for stretches there.
It went into a shell. You don't want that. You want more of what they
started out in that shell.
Yeah, well, no, of course. And this is the other thing, okay? If we can flip over to the Notre Dame side.
Please.
Our friend Pete Sampson on his excellent podcast that he does with Matt Fortuna, The Independent. I listened early this morning.
Yeah.
And I'm paraphrasing here, but Pete hit the nail on the head. And his comment on the game plan was that it felt like 4 quarters of them trying to get CJ Carr comfortable when CJ Carr was kind of comfortable right away. And that's what I liked about CJ Carr in this game. I mean, he wasn't perfect. He clearly has a different relationship with intentional grounding than most quarterbacks in college football.
Yeah.
There were some moments here, but I think by and large, he didn't seem overwhelmed by the moment. He did come out. He did seem reasonably comfortable. The game plan, though, was such where they were trying to do a lot of that quick game stuff to the outside. The game plan barely utilized Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. I do think they need to find some way to rebalance their game plan in time for Texas A&M in 2 weeks.
Well, you knew it was a big game against a top 15 team because Jeremiah Love did nothing.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. That's very kind of you.
Why does that keep happening? Jeremiah Love's the best running back in the sport, and anytime he plays a really good team, he does nothing? Okay. Just checking.
They didn't even give him a chance to do much of anything in this game.
10 carries.
He had 3 hurdles, and that was probably the highlight of the night for him. Yep. I'd like to see them the rest of the way find a way to utilize him a little bit more if he's half as good as everybody expects he will be this season.
Yeah.
But there was, I thought, from the Notre Dame fan perspective, a lot of optimism over what CJ showed. I mean, if this is the starting point, if he's only going to get better from here, again, he's not perfect. Nobody's going to go out there and say he is, but
right.
I thought he seemed pretty good. The only other point on the Jeremiah Love thing, did you catch an all-time McDonough-ism?
Maybe. What did he say?
Later in the game, when they finally got him the ball, we had a McDonough, Jeremiah Love out of the witness protection program.
Oh, nice.
It was great. An all-timer. I mean,
Jadarian Price had the one explosive run, right?
He did.
So,
look, the O-line did not look good.
No.
For as good as Anthony Knapp was, the left tackle last season, he struggled with Rueben Bain.
Get some whiffs.
Came down with cramps later in the game. It just did not seem like these guys were on the same page. There were a handful of missed blocks. There was miscommunication. We're used to seeing Notre Dame be the bully. We're used to seeing them dictate the tempo and the tone. They didn't do this at all on the offensive side. The good news, if there is any on the Notre Dame side, there's still a lot of season left. There's still big games left. Provided they can improve from this, the season is still out there in front of them. I do think they're going to fix the line. They've got a track record for doing so. We saw it all last season.
Sure.
I do think they're going to rejigger the game plan now that they know CJ Carr is probably the right choice to be the quarterback. I'm most concerned about the defensive line. Back to what I said at the top, because they did get pushed around trying to stop the run. They got better, perhaps, as Miami went into a bit of a shell, but like A&M's coming to town in 2 weeks. And if they don't figure out how to stop the rushing attack of whoever they're playing, they're going to start 0-2.
Well, they got Boise, which is nice after what Boise wasn't able to show against USF.
They should hammer Boise, but the A&M game, that A&M game is going to be a problem if they can't figure out how to be a little bit more aggressive against the run, because it felt like it took Chris Ash way too long to commit resources to stopping that very specific aspect of the Miami game plan. And at that point, they had already done a lot of damage. So again, you're not going to look at the box score and it's not going to whack you over the head as being something otherworldly, but that, in my opinion anyway, and I've already gotten some pushback on this, but in my opinion, that was, I thought, a very underrated aspect of what Miami did on offense, just being able to dictate the tone up front.
By the way, flip side, if Miami goes anything less than 10-2 after starting out the season, beating Notre Dame and looking like, look, the defense is not a finished product. There's going to be lapses this season and there's going to be surges this season. If they finish anything less than 10-2 after what they showed Sunday night,
that's a problem.
That's a big old problem with this schedule.
Yeah, that's going to be a problem.